We've talked a lot over the weekend about alcoholism and the history of AA and how long alcoholism has been around and so on and so forth. I've got a little thing I want to read to you this morning to indicate maybe how long it's been here in the States. And this is a little story about the USS Constitution. It said on August the 23rd, 1779, the USS Constitution set sail from Boston with 475 officers and men on board. She had 48,600 gallons of fresh water, 7,400 cannon shot, 11,600 pounds of black powder, and 79,000 gallons of rum. She had permission to harass and destroy English shipping. Making Jamaica on October the 6th, she took on 825 pounds of flour and 68,300 gallons of rum. Then she headed for the Azores, where she arrived on November the 12th. She provisioned with 550 pounds of beef and 54,300 gallons of Portuguese wine. On November the 18th, she set sail for England. In the ensuing days, she defeated 5 British men of war, captured and scuttled 15 English merchantmen, salvaging only the rum. By January 27th, her powder and shot were exhausted. Unarmed, she made a night raid up the Firth of Clyde, and her landing party captured a whiskey distillery and transferred 40,000 gallons of whiskey aboard before dawn. Then she headed for home. The USS Constitution arrived in Boston Harbor in February 1780 with no cannon shot, no food, no powder, no rum, no whiskey, no wine, and 48,600 gallons of stagnant water. Been around a long time, hasn't it?
Yeah. Okay. Let's move to the doctor's opinion. Roman numeral, let's go to 24 as we begin. Before we begin, let's put this in perspective of time. We got to go back in time to that time in 1939, where we were as a human, the world was, where we were with alcoholism at that time. In the world, what do we know about it? And we didn't really understand the problem. You know, alcohol has been a problem since the beginning of time. When man first discovered alcohol thousands of years ago, it has always been a problem. But you know, we humans didn't really understand that problem. We have many problems today. We have a problem today called cancer. And hastily, we would say that we're hunting for a cure for cancer, but all the research is trying to find out what is cancer, what is the problem. We could develop the treatment and the solution if we knew that. And this is where we were with alcoholism up to 1939. No one ever understood the problem. You know, a lot of misconceptions. Mainly we thought it was a sin or a weakness. And as alcohol began to be a problem for people in the very beginning, they figured 1 out of 10, every 10 people that drank, one of them's an alcoholic. But what happened when the first 10 started drinking? 9 of them didn't have no problem. 9 of them had a great time. And one of them was probably over there getting drunk and beating up his wife or something. And these 9 said, what's wrong with him? Right? Now we have to realize that all the misconceptions of the alcoholic were developed by the non-alcoholic. There was a non-alcoholic who said, well, he must be weak. He must be sinful. The one alcoholic didn't care. He probably kept on drinking. He didn't care about it. He wasn't even trying to find out. So all the misconception about alcohol, no one really understood this problem. We can go back to the very beginning of time. And I love to look at one of the earliest explanations of this is in the big book. In Proverbs 23:29 to the end of the chapter. Solomon, whose credit is right, Solomon was had a great mind. This man was a man of great wisdom. He had great insight into human problems People from all over his known world came to him with their problems. He was a social worker of that day. And, you know, and they asked him about it, and Solomon had looked into it in that verse very beautifully. He said, who hath woe? Who has sorrow? Who has wounds without cause? They that tarry longeth to wine. That's all they had in those days. Everybody was a wino. They didn't discover this whiskey and beer until later on. And he said, you know, you will beeth one who lieth down in the midst of a sea. You know, you sway around a lot. Or sleepeth at the top of a mast. He said, at last it would bite like a serpent and stingeth with like an adder. And he sure knew some of us fellas too. Because he said, thine eyes shall behold strange women. And thy heart will honor perverse things. You know, those drunks was just like 1989 drunks. But the way he closed it out was profound, because he had really watched it. He said, but still yet in the morning, they seek it yet again. They get up and drink the same thing. Solomon didn't understand. None of the great minds down through history ever understood the problem, although they tried a lot of solutions. But first, I think the first time we recorded history was a physician here in this country, a man named Dr. Benjamin Russ, I think in 1784, said that he thought that this was a disease process. And he said he thought the answer was total abstinence. He was one of the earliest signs of Declaration of Independence. And he was correct, but no one ever listened to him, or could he explain it any farther? Maybe his explanation wasn't very complete. No, neither was Silkworth. Silkworth came to the town's hospital. Alcohol, no one ever understood it. And Dr. Silkworth went to Towns Hospital in 1930. He did not go there for this, although that man later treated 50,000 alcoholics before he died. It was during the Depression. He had lost his money in the stock market like most of these people had, and he couldn't find a job, and so he took a job at the Towns Hospital for $40 a week, room and board. And he was very interested in people, although not in alcoholism. And he began to study his patients as he worked with these people. And during these 3 years, between 1930 and 1933, when he saw Bill, he began to try to, he said, everybody else said these people is weak and is sinful, but he said, I think it's something in these people that's causing this. And he started off with that idea, and he said, I begin to discern some power or something within these people. And as he worked on this little theory, he was able to divide it into two areas. He said, I believe part of it's in their body and part of it's in their mind. And he said, you know, the only thing I can say about this is an abnormal reaction in the body, and I believe it's an analogy. And he said, I know that this word it doesn't completely explain it, and it leaves it open for a lot of controversy, but this is the best that I can explain it now, is that something abnormal happens in these people, so it's an analogy of the body. And he developed the idea of this obsession or compulsion which makes us take this first drink. And he was working on this when he shared this with Bill in 1933, and it was just his opinion, a concept that he had developed. And it was from this book that once Bill took it and recovered on that, and then he gave it to Dr. Bob, and Dr. Bob recovered on that concept, and then Bill Dodson. Then they wrote that concept of alcoholism in this book. Now, in 1939, the American Medical Association, the American Psychiatric Association, really did a real negative review of this book and this doctor. But finally, they kept working at this, and as a result of this, 150,000 people were sober, based on that concept in 1956. And then after 1956, the American Medical Association and the American Psychiatric Association in 1956 said alcoholism is a disease. The concept was proven by the results. And today everybody accepts the fact that alcoholism is a disease, and it began from Dr. Silkworth, and it began in the front of the Big Book in 1939. While you're looking at the Big Book this weekend, if you look at the doctor's opinion, you will notice that Dr. Silkworth did not sign the doctor's opinion in 1939. In fact, he didn't sign and put his name on it to the second edition in 1955. But it was just an opinion that became a fact from the results. So he begins on page 24. The physician who at our request gave us this letter has been kind enough to enlarge upon his views in another statement which follows. In this statement he confirms that we who suffer alcoholic torture must believe that the body of the alcoholic is quite as abnormal as the mind. In other words, here we're going to look at this disease as the body and the mind. You know, most diseases affect the body. Some others affect the mind. But he said this is going to affect the body and the mind.
This is the first time we can find anywhere in written history that there is a reference to the fact that the body is affected as well.
Mm-hmm.
Everything up to now had dealt with the mind only. Weak will, moral character, sin, etc.
It did not satisfy us to be told we could not control our drinking just because we were maladjusted to life mentally, that we were in full flight from reality or outright mental defectives. These things are true to some extent. In fact, to a considerable extent with some of us. But we are sure that the body is sickened as well. In our belief, any picture of the alcoholic which leaves out the physical factor is incomplete. Now we're going to be talking about a disease that affects the body and the mind. And when we get into recovery, we're going to be talking about the spiritual life. So before this is over, we're going to be talking about all three areas of human life: the spirit, the mind, and the body.
The doctor's theory that we have an allergy to alcohol interests us. As laymen, our opinion as to its soundness may, of course, mean little. But as ex-problem drinkers, we can say that his explanation makes good sense. It explains many things for which we could not otherwise account. And here I think we need to stop and begin a practice of looking at some key words.
Right.
Now, if it's true that a textbook is used to transfer information from the mind of one person to another, which I believe it is, then it stands to reason that the transference of that information is going to be based purely on the understanding of words. If the writer of the book uses a word and has one meaning for it, and the reader of the book reads that word but has a different understanding of it, then the information that comes through is going to be garbled information. The knowledge is going to be incomplete. And there's a few key words in the big book that I think a lot of us have had some difficulty with, and one of them seems to be this word allergy. You know, before coming to AA, I thought I knew and understood exactly what an allergy is. I knew that if you were allergic to something and you got around it, if you ate it, if you drank it, came in contact with it, there would be some visible indicator or manifestation of that allergy. For instance, if you're allergic to strawberries and you eat them, you'll normally break out in a rash. The rash being the physical, visible manifestation of the allergy. If you're allergic to milk and you drink it, you'll probably have a bad case of dysentery. The dysentery being the physical reaction that shows the allergy. If you're allergic to ragweeds and you get around them, your eyes itch, your nose itch, they begin to water and you start to sneeze. Now I come to AA and they said to me, "Charlie, you're allergic to alcohol, you'll never be able to safely drink it again." And I said, "How in the hell can I be allergic to alcohol? Now I'm drinking a quart a day. How can you possibly drink that much of something you're allergic to?" And I said, "Besides that, alcohol doesn't make me break out in a rash." I said, "Alcohol doesn't give me a bad case of dysentery. Once in a while it would, but, you know, depending on what I drank, but usually it didn't." And I said, nor does it necessarily make my eyes, nose itch and cause them to water. I don't understand what you're talking about." And they said, "Well, you don't need to understand. All you got to know is you just can't drink it because you're allergic to it." Well, today I know exactly why they told me that. They didn't understand it a bit better than I did. Now, if you've got a keen intellectual alcoholic mind like I have, you just can't leave those things floating out here forever. So one day, in order to find the answer to this, I went to a source of information that's never failed me since, happened to be a dictionary. And I looked up the word allergy. And I found several different definitions for that word. It's the same as you do with any other word, depending on how you use it. But I found the one I think fits me exactly. When it said an allergy is an abnormal reaction to any food, beverage, or substance of any kind. An abnormal reaction. So I said, well, if that's the case, then I need to see where I'm abnormal. So I began to try to look back in my life to see where I'm abnormal, and to my amazement, I found that I didn't know what was normal and what was abnormal. Because the only thing I knew about drinking was the way I drank, and those people drank who drank with me, and if they didn't drink like I did, they didn't drink with me. So I knew nothing about drinking except alcoholic drinking. So in order for me to find out what is normal, then I've got to go talk to those non-alcoholic drinkers, the normal, temperate, social, moderate drinker. And I would ask them to explain to me, how do you feel? What happens to you whenever you take a drink? And they would usually tell me something like this. They'll say, well, we come home from work, tired, tense, wrought up from the day's work. And they said, we'll have a drink or two before dinner. We'll get kind of a comfortable, relaxing feeling. Then we'll go ahead and eat dinner. And then we probably won't drink any more that night. Well, now, I don't feel that way when I drink alcohol at all. I take a drink of alcohol and I put it to my lips, and as it crosses my lips begin to tingle. It hits my teeth and they kind of chatter up and down. Hits my tongue and I can immediately feel my tongue begin to grow and expand and swell. Hits my cheeks and they flutter in and out. At the same time, I can feel it passing up through my sinus cavities into my forehead, and I get a feeling in my forehead which is absolutely indescribably wonderful. Now, I haven't even swallowed the damn stuff yet. I just got it in my mouth. When I swallow that alcohol and it starts down through my esophagus, great things begin to take place immediately. First thing that happens is my chest begins to grow and expand and get bigger and bigger. It hits my stomach and it just literally explodes like a bomb, and I can feel it immediately racing through my arms, and they get longer and longer, and it hits my fingers and hands and fingers, and they begin to tingle and vibrate, and at the same time it's racing through my legs, and as it does, my legs are getting longer and longer, and I'm getting taller and taller, and it hits my feet and my toes, and they get a hot, intense, burning, exciting, get up and go somewhere and do something feeling. I don't understand a comfortable, relaxing feeling when you take a drink. I think that's one of the reasons I loved to drink, is it made me feel different than it made those people feel. But that's not the most important difference. Here's the real important difference. Those normal social drinkers tell me, they say when we have 2 or 3 drinks, they say we begin to get a slightly tipsy, out of control, beginnings of a nauseous feeling. And they say we don't like that slightly tipsy, out of control. We don't like the nauseous feeling. Therefore, 1, 2, or 3 drinks is all they want to take. Now, you've seen it before. I used to try to get my wife to take another drink. She'd have 2 drinks and try to get her to take a 3rd or 4th drink. She'd say, oh, no, I feel this one already. And she would kind of giggle. And if I ever did get her to take a 3rd drink, she'd do 1 or 2 things. She'd either vomit or go to sleep almost immediately every time. You know, today I realize that is a normal reaction to alcohol. Alcohol is a toxic substance. It's a destroyer of human tissue. And when you put something in the body that will destroy it, the mind and body can usually recognize what it is, and one of the first reactions to it is nausea, to vomit it and get it up and get it out of the system. And that's a normal reaction to alcohol. Now, I never knew that before. I had to go talk to those people and get them to tell me about that before I knew that's the way they reacted to it. Now, whenever I take a couple of drinks of alcohol, I do not get a slightly tipsy, out of control feeling. The first thing happens to me is I get an in control feeling. And then the second thing that happens to me is where their body reacts with nausea, my body reacts with, give me some more of the same. There is a physical craving that is produced in my body that demands the third drink and the fourth drink and a fifth drink and a sixth drink, where theirs says vomit it out. My body simply says give me some more. And my reaction to it is absolutely abnormal. The only difference between normal and abnormal is what the majority of the people do. If 9 react that way and 1 reacts that way, then the 1 is considered to be abnormal. My physical manifestation of my allergy to alcohol, you cannot see it. It's not visible. You can only feel it. And you take a couple drinks and put it in your system, and if you're an alcoholic and the phenomenon of craving develops, then you take a third drink and a fourth drink and a fifth drink, and it's beyond your ability mentally to stop after you have once started. This is abnormal, therefore we are allergic to alcohol.